Google Sheets is a spreadsheet application that is designed to store and organize information, perform calculations, make decisions, and create charts. First and foremost, I'm going to create a new workbook by typing sheets.new into the Omnibox. This will create a new workbook file that I will be able to utilize for the remainder of this tutorial video. I need to name this file. By default, it shows Untitled Spreadsheet, but I need to give it a title that's going to be more specific than that. So I'm going to click where it says Untitled Spreadsheet in the top left-hand corner of the window, and I'm going to rename this Google Sheets Tutorial. Then I'm going to specify where in my Google Drive I want this particular file to be located by clicking on the folder icon to the very right of the title, scrolling through my folders list until I find the tutorials folder, and then clicking on the move button. Then it will show at the top of the screen that the Google Sheets tutorial has been moved from my drive to the tutorials folder. The fundamental element of a spreadsheet is data. The purpose of this video is to help you understand how to enter the data into the spreadsheet and then how to utilize that data to create a chart. A spreadsheet is organized into columns and rows. Columns run vertically and rows run horizontally. Columns are identified by a letter, which is found at the top of the column in the column headings, and rows are identified by a number, which are found in the row headings to the left of your cells. The intersection of the column and the row forms a cell. Data can only be entered into a spreadsheet in an active cell. The active cell can be easily identified by the blue border that surrounds the cell. So let's assume that I'm going to track the scores for the gymnastics team. It's very important that you identify what information you're going to need to collect and organize into your spreadsheet. For the purpose of this demonstration, I'm going to need to enter the scores for each girl for each event that they competed in each meet during the month of December. I'm going to create an individual spreadsheet for each gymnast and then enter the data into the spreadsheet with that girl's name. By default, when a workbook is created, one spreadsheet is created called Sheet 1. You can find the Sheet tabs in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. You'll notice next to the name Sheet 1 there's a drop-down box, and that drop-down box, when clicked on, will open up a shortcut menu. I'm going to click on the option called Rename in that menu, and I'm going to give this first spreadsheet a name called Elizabeth. Then I'm going to use the column headings as the dates of the meets and the row headings as the event names. So for example, in cell B1, I'm going to enter the date of the first meet, November 27th. Then using the tab key on the keyboard, in C1, I'm going to enter 12-1, in D1, 12-6, and in E1, 12-14. Then in A2, I'm going to type vault, and using the arrow key, I'm going to go down to A3 and do bars, followed by beam, followed by floor. Now there are many different girls on the gymnastics team, and I need to have a sheet for each of them. I'm going to use this sheet as basically a template for all of the other sheets for the other girls. So again, going back to the Sheet tab titled Elizabeth, I'm going to click on the drop-down box and open up the shortcut menu for this sheet, and I'm going to duplicate this sheet so that all of the information that was entered in the columns and the rows and the individual cells for Elizabeth's sheet will be placed on this new sheet. By default, the title, Copy of Elizabeth, is then used as the sheet title. However, I'm going to then rename this sheet, and I'm going to call this Emily. So now I have two sheets for two different gymnasts currently with the same information on them, the name of the apparatus and the date of the event. I'm going to go back to Elizabeth's sheet so that I can enter in her information. I know that Elizabeth's sheet is the active sheet because in the sheet tabs it is white. The inactive sheets will show up as gray. Okay, in cell B2, we're going to enter in the score for vault for the November 27th meet of a 7.2. And in B5, we're going to enter in the floor score of an 8.1. In C2, we're going to type in an 8.0. And in C5, we're going to type in a 7.9. In D2, we're going to type in an 8.4. In D5, an 8.3. In E2, an 8.2. And an E5, an 8.0. Now, I want all of these scores to display with 2 decimal places. But by default, the scores of an 8.0 are displaying with 0 decimals, and the other scores are only showing with 1. So I'm going to need to override this setting. So I'm going to select the cell range B2 through E5, and then I'm going to use the increase decimal icon on the toolbar once. This will give me 2 decimal places for all of the scores. Now, if I only wanted 1 decimal place to show up, then I can click on the decrease decimal icon. But in this case, I do want 2, so I'm going to leave it with 2 by clicking on increase decimal once. Now I'd like to analyze some of the data that I've entered. First, I would like to calculate her average score for all of the meets. So in cell F1, I'm going to type in average as the column heading. In F2, I'm going to enter the function equals average, open parenthesis, B2, colon, E2, close parenthesis. And you'll notice that it will highlight the information that I have selected, B2 through E2. Then I'm going to hit enter, and it's going to tell me that the average score that Elizabeth earned on Vault during the course of the month was a 7.95. Then I'm going to click back on cell F2, and using the fill handle, which is the square in the bottom right-hand corner of the active cell, I'm going to copy the function by dragging the fill handle down all the way to F5. You will see that cells E3 and E4 end up with an error because there is no data in cells B3 through E4. I would also like to find out what Elizabeth's total score was for each meet, which can be calculated by adding the score earned on each event. Therefore, in cell A6, I'm going to type the title total score. Then in cell B6, I'm going to type equals sum, open parenthesis, and I'm going to click on B2 through B5, which means that on the November 27th meet, Elizabeth got a total score of 15.3. Then again, I'm going to use the fill handle to fill the function to the adjacent cells through E6. So I'm going to click back on B6, click on the little box in the bottom right-hand corner of the active cell, so my mouse turns into this plus sign, and I'm going to drag over to E6. These are only 2 of hundreds of functions that are available in Google Sheets. To find the most common functions, you can go to the Insert menu, and in the Insert menu, hover your mouse over the word function, and then hover your mouse over the category. You can also find the whole list of functions if you go to the Help menu, and in the Help menu, click on Functions List. This will open up a new tab, and it will show you what is the function and a description of what that particular function does. You can also search for functions and narrow your search by filtering out a specific category. Lastly, we're going to create a visual representation of our data by creating a chart. There are a number of charting options available in Google Sheets, including line, area, bar, column, pie, scatter, and a number of other options. For today's graph, I want to create a line chart to show the trend in her scores over time. I need to select the information that I want to chart. On a basic level, I can select the adjacent cells in cell range A1 through E5. Notice I'm not including the average or the total for this particular chart. Then I'm going to go to the Insert menu, and I'm going to click on Chart. By default, a bar chart is selected. So we will need to change the chart type in the chart editor, which is the panel that pulls up automatically on the right-hand side of the screen. The top item in the chart editor is your chart type. So I'm going to click on a line chart. You'll notice that the information on the chart doesn't display correctly, primarily because we have some cells that are empty with no data, so we'll need to make a few other changes in the editor. If I scroll to the bottom of the editor panel, I'll need to toggle on the options that say switch rows and columns, use column A as headers, and use row 1 as labels so that the chart will display on the screen. The chart at this point is showing the lines of the graph, scores on the y-axis and dates on the x-axis. However, if you look at the x-axis, you will notice that it shows all dates between November 27th and December 12th and doesn't display the information for December 14th. In order to fix this, I'm also going to need to toggle on the option in the chart editor that says aggregate row 1. Then the data will show only for the dates that I have entered into the spreadsheet, November 27th, December 1st, December 6th, and December 14th. The legend shows a red line for the floor and a blue line for the vault. The alternative option for creating a chart is to select non-adjacent cell ranges, meaning that they are not located directly next to each other in the spreadsheet, so that the chart will show up correctly from the very beginning. To demonstrate this, I'm going to delete this previously created chart by clicking on the chart and hitting delete on the keyboard. Then I'm going to select the cell range A1 through E2, and then I'm going to press and hold the control key on the keyboard while I select A5 through E5. Then I'm going to go back to the insert menu and I'm going to click on chart. You will notice that from the very beginning, the chart will show up with the lines of the graph. The only thing that I will need to do is scroll down to the bottom of the chart editor and turn on the option again to aggregate row 1 so it only shows the actual dates that I entered into the spreadsheet. Once you have the chart data displaying correctly, you can click on the Customize tab in the chart editor panel. If you want to change the background color of the chart or the font of the information, you can click on the Chart Styles option. So I'm going to make this green, and I'll change this to wide font. If you want to add titles to the chart x-axis or y-axis, you'll need to click on the option called Axis Titles. By default, it identified Vault and Floor as the title of this chart because that's the data that it was taking from the spreadsheet. However, I don't want that, so I'm going to make sure that it says Chart Title, and then I'm going to give this a title of 2018-2019 Score Tracking. Then I'm going to change the x-axis, which is the horizontal axis title, to Meet Dates, and the vertical axis, which is the y-axis, to Event Score. You'll notice that for each of the axis titles, you do have the option to customize the font, font size, font styles, and color of the font. I'm also going to add a star to each of the data points in the chart that I have created. So I'm going to click on Series, and under Series where it says point size, I'm going to change this to a 7-pixel point size. By default, it shows up as circles. However, I want it to actually be stars, so I'm going to change that marker to a star. There are a number of other options and customization to utilize, so make sure to spend some time looking around at these different options. Now I'm going to go ahead and close the chart editor panel. As you can see, the chart now shows in the spreadsheet on top of the data. In order to fix this, you have a couple of options. First, if you want the chart to still show up on the same sheet as the data, you can click on the chart and move it around in the spreadsheet so it's not covering up the data. You can also use your resize handles to make the chart larger and smaller depending on the needs of your spreadsheet. Alternatively, you can put the spreadsheet on its own sheet. So if you click on the chart and in the top right-hand corner, notice that there are 3 dots. When you click on those 3 dots, there's an option that says Move to Own Sheet. If you click on Move to Own Sheet, it will then move the spreadsheet to a brand new sheet. If you look at your sheet tabs in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, you'll see there is now a new sheet that we didn't create before called Chart 1. You would then want to rename this sheet to something more specific. So I'm going to say Elizabeth chart. So I know that it's charting Elizabeth's information. An awesome feature of utilizing electronic spreadsheets, and one of the best reasons for using one, is that if data is changed in the spreadsheet, the math is automatically recalculated and all of the charts are redrawn. So for example, let's assume that I made a typo in cell B2 on Elizabeth's spreadsheet, and Elizabeth did not actually get a 7.2 on November 27th. She got an 8.2 on Vault on November 27th. So right now, you'll notice with the 7.2 as a score, her average was a 7.95. But if I change the typo to an 8.2, it will change her average also to an 8.2. And then if we look at her chart now will be redrawn to show that change as well. I hope that this tutorial video has helped you with understanding how to enter data, utilize functions to perform calculations, and create a visual representation, specifically in this case a line chart of the data. If you have any questions, feel free to stop down and see me in G106.